Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. I think everybody's here. A few of you forgot where we were meeting this week. So we had a few late arrivals. I'm not going to point anybody out.
We didn't get the email. It's true, we didn't get the reminder email. They were like, this is our job.
And next week, where are we meeting? Next week, we're here again. Okay. Now, no one who's here now will be missing it the next week, right? You know exactly where we're meeting. Okay. So we're going to begin with questions and answers on the veggies and fruit, nut, herbs. Yes.
I have some citrus trees and I bought some fertilizer today. Is it too late to do fertilizer now? Should I wait until next year?
Actually, now is a good time. Usually twice a year we recommend in general is
The
like
instructions
February.
say 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, no.
And it's too
We
much.
usually recommend a good dose in February,
Okay.
like a pound to a pound and a half of a good balanced fertilizer per year of tree age. And then in June, especially if your tree is still looking pretty healthy and pretty good, then just use nitrogen.
Okay.
And that's about, I think it's a half pound per year of age.
Okay.
But if you've done a soil test or you think it might need more of potassium and phosphorus, you can go ahead and do a complete. But usually June, it just needs the nitrogen to give it that last pump, to keep the leaves green so it can really develop the fruit and get the sugars built up.
And I have 2 of the trees are actually in the lawn.
Uh-huh.
Is it okay to fertilize with grass right there?
Yeah, because the tree needs it.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, the lawn's going to take up part of the nitrogen.
Yeah.
So you might want to bump that up a little bit.
Cool. Thanks.
Yes.
Do fertilizers always just get it wrong? She's saying like, oh, the package say 4 to 6 weeks, and you say, well, nah, it's this, that, and the third. But I find that every time, whatever fertilizer you get, if you speak to a sort of seasoned vet, they're like, don't do that.
Uh-huh.
Why?
Well, what the fertilizer companies are trying to do is on the bags, they don't regionalize, they don't even plant specialize on their instructions. So they more or less try to print an instruction that if you follow it, you'll probably get good results in Washington State, in the tip of Florida, in Manhattan, Kansas, and you'll get good results with vegetables, with flowers, and with your fruit trees. So what they usually end up with, if you follow the instructions, most of them you're actually over fertilizing.
Right.
And so it's always a good idea to try to tailor your fertilization to your crop. The crop, if you give it more than it needs, sometimes it doesn't really hurt it, but you're wasting your money. You're putting stuff out there that no telling where it's going to end up sometimes. Sometimes it ends up in our water table, and so that can be a problem over the course of time. If you're near a stream or something, you can get runoff from that. So it's a good idea to tailor it to what you're growing and to your soil test results, because even the LSU Ag Center, if you look at the vegetable growing guides that we print and give out, they'll give a general recommendation for growing your vegetables, like your tomatoes, so much 888 or 1313 per row foot or something like that. And they'll even say you're using the same amount of 888 or 1313. So when you see that, obviously you know that one of them is going to be over fertilizing or the other one's going to be under fertilizing, because you're adding the same weight of 2 different analysis fertilizers. But that's the general recommendation, and they'll always include something that is, they call it balanced, and it's be 888 or 1313. But I think it's in your manuals. If not, I think we taught it. But plants don't even use those nutrients on a 1-to-1-to-1 basis. I think it's a 3-to-1-to-2 basis. So a truly balanced fertilizer would have in the ratios of 3-to-1-to-2. But, plants are very, put up with a lot of things. But like I said, even the LSU publications will say that. But if you do a soil test and then get the recommendations, you get much better fine tuning. And with most of the fertilizers, don't go spend lots of money on a citrus specific fertilizer or a palm specific fertilizer or a tomato specific fertilizer, because in general the fertilizers, they play with the ratios, but if you got a soil analysis, the ratio isn't that important, because you know what your plants need, so that's what you provide to them. And they formulate those and put a name on them, and if there's anyone who works for a fertilizer company, I'm sorry, but they put a name on them so they can charge a premium price. Like this one's specially formulated for your citrus trees. The only one that we really recommend that you pay attention to is if you're growing something like gardenias or hydrangeas or azaleas or blueberries. Get a fertilizer that is recommended for acid-loving plants. So if you have an acid-loving crop or plant that you're growing, do try to get the acid-loving fertilizer, because that tends to lower the pH of the soil or keep it low in addition to fertilizing. And so those are formulated to do something that is important. The others, yes.
This is kind of a, have you ever heard of this question? This lemon tree was in full bloom, and we had a storm and it knocked every bloom off, okay? And now I've got new blooms, new blossoms on the tree. Do you think it's gonna make lemons?
Oh yeah.
It's like,
And lemon trees are notorious. They're one of a little bit funky in that lemons, most citrus trees and the varieties you'll see, and they'll say, they primarily have a spring flush of flowers or something like that. Lemons tend to flower all year long anyway. And you can have ripe lemons, green lemons this big, lemons this big, and flowers all on the same tree. Because that's the way the lemon does it. Yes.
While we're on the citrus trees, okay, so I had bought, let's see, 2018, I guess it's 3 years now, citrus trees, a bunch of different kinds, lemon, satsuma, mandarin, and blood orange. Some of them have since grown, like they've grown, but they've grown offshoots that have a lot of thorns. And someone told me that those thorny branches that have grown won't produce fruit. Is that true? And is it normal for them to grow thorns when they didn't have thorns before?
No. Lemon trees, a lot of lemon trees will produce thorns. Even the good limbs will produce thorns. And then what you're getting on, now if your tree, if the shoots are coming from below, where the graft union is,
right, yeah.
then definitely those are going to have thorns, because that comes from the rootstock, and you don't want those. You want to get rid of those. Get everything below the graft union needs to go, because it'll take over. It'll be much stronger than your scion, and it will actually take over and crowd out the one you want. And then there's what they call water shoots, and usually those, like you'll have a branch, like an orange branch or a lemon branch or something coming out, and then you'll have one that shoots straight up, right off of the branch. It'll shoot straight up. It grows really fast, outgrows everything else, and if you notice, it's usually not as strong as the others, and those are what they call water shoots. Now those, if you left them, they will flower and produce fruit, but they're so weak they would probably break off or something like that. So water shoots, the recommendation generally is take them off right where they originate. The ones that are just shooting up like that, and they'll, I don't think, I guess I'd almost say always at this point, will go straight up. They don't do this or this, they just straight up. And those you want to get rid of, because you want, on citrus especially, strong branches. And that's why even the ones that are growing out, you want to nub them back, so that then the next year, before the shoots grow out, they'll get larger and stronger, because citrus fruit can be heavy. And once it bends a limb down, the limb never goes back up to where it was. I mean, it'll go back up some when you harvest the fruit, but each year it'll go lower and lower from the weight of the fruit.
So
you want them to be
too late to
strong.
trim that now?
Get rid of the water shoots as soon as they pop up,
And what about
any
the
time of
ones
year.
coming from below the grass?
Get rid of those too. Don't
And
leave
you
them.
just like, I mean, some of the branches are like this big, so I just like use a saw and saw it down at the ground.
If they're coming from the root stock, yes, get rid of them as close to it as you can. Yes.
So citrus, I have a lemon and a blood orange, and both of them were, when you said they flower all year round, last year I think they were flowering all year round, but I looked at them today, I noticed they're not flowering. But they look healthy otherwise, so does that mean I should just go ahead and assume I need to fertilize, or?
Yeah, go ahead and give them the fruit. You said the blood orange and the lemon, neither one of them have flowers or fruit?
Yeah, I mean, they don't look flowery like, I mean, yeah.
Because blood oranges, they have a tendency to do alternate bearing.
Every other year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so they
and they're
really,
young, like, they didn't really, that tree didn't even really put out much last year, except for like
Uh-huh.
mostly kind of like not good fruit, but the lemon was starting, so.
but the lemon, it should flower, so,
Okay, so fertilize,
yeah, go ahead and give it a shot.
okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Citrus in containers, fertilization. same-
Now, citrus in containers is different.
Okay.
Because growing anything in container, I think you guys have probably heard me say it over and over, especially the nitrogen will leach out when it's watering, so it goes away fast. So citrus in containers, using a good slow release fertilizer is a good idea, or if you're just use standard fertilizer, you will still need to give it nitrogen probably at least once every 3 weeks. And when the fruit's really growing and setting, maybe every 2 weeks,
So
because
right now-
the nitrogen, especially with all the rain we're having, it'll leach out of the containers and not be available.
So I'm doing, like, once a week I feed all the container, I just decided that way I don't skip.
Okay.
So I do the water-based, like a Miracle Grow or
Uh-huh.
equivalent. Is that generally okay?
Yeah, that'll be good. Yep.
So the tree and nut fertilizer sticks, they have the right combination that we.
Okay. Now that comes to all the like Joe's tree food spikes and all that. The problem with those is when you stick them in the ground, that's the same as digging a little hole and pouring your fertilizer in there. Now we've already talked about the movement of the nutrients in the soil, like phosphorus and potassium. Those aren't quite as water soluble, but anything in the soil, as it goes into solution, tends to do this. So if you use spikes and you put one, and then maybe say use one every 3 feet. So you put one here and you put one here, that means the feeder roots here and the feeder roots here will be getting fertilizer. Everything in here and everything over here will not be getting anything from those spikes. And that's why we recommend a general broadcast of the fertilizer. That way it's getting to all of the root system, or as much as you can broadcast it on top of it. Yes, ma'am.
My question is about building raised beds.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about using pressure treated wood? Should I be concerned about leaching unwanted chemicals and
Before 1977, the materials they used to treat wood, you didn't want to use it because it would leach out. There was arsenic they used and some other things. After 1977, all the pressure treated wood uses copper-based injection materials and stuff like that. And so pressure treated wood won't, none of the stuff will leach out and cause any problems with your plants or anything as far as health. Now, if you look at, I think, because I was talking to someone up at LSU, I think the USDA still says on their recommendation, don't use pressure treated wood. And there's no reason, because if you look at the research, it's the material doesn't leach out. The material that's used isn't even harmful to people and the plants. And so using pressure treated wood is not a problem. And you'll get a lot longer life out of it. It's the same as you'll see sometimes they recommend don't use concrete blocks or cement blocks to make raised beds, because it'll cause the leaching from those will cause the pH in the soil to get really high. But that's not true either. It may affect about 1 inch of the soil inward, might be affected to some degree. But further in than that, it's not going to cause any problems with your with your pH in your soil. Yes.
What about pallets? I've always heard that I don't even like to touch pallets. but I see all these DIY things about building furniture, building raised beds, building all kinds of stuff, and I just can't imagine there isn't something really bad in pallets.
Well, the only thing that would be bad in the pallets is if something that was hauled on them was damaged and leaked onto them, because the pallets themselves, actually, we don't recommend using pallets, especially in our area, because they use low quality wood. It's not been treated to stop decay. And if you use pallets, within a year or so, they're going to be totally decayed and you're going to have to replace them. Because they don't do anything to try to stop the decay in the pallets. They use cheap, inexpensive wood, usually fast-grown wood, so it's of low strength quality. And so that's why we wouldn't recommend pallets. Yes?
I've also seen the pallets, so I made my compost bin a while ago out of pallets, and they'll be labeled sometimes if they're treated with anything. So it should be like a stamp on the pallet. If you go to like a local hardware store, like that one on Ferret, they have good pallets there, and none of them have had like weird labeling. So.
And even the stuff, if they do treat the pallets, is the same as after 1977. They cannot use anything that they used to, the dangerous stuff, the arsenics and all that. Those aren't allowed to be used anymore.
The same thing with, I was trying to find something to make some arches for growing like squash and things. And at Lowe's, where they had like the chicken wire or the fencing that they have, it all has that like prop, whatever warning that it causes cancer and all this. Do you know the reasoning for that and what you want to grow? I could see maybe like a watermelon if you're not going to eat the rind, but like if you're going to eat the outside of the cucumber, do you want that touching that?
Well, the galvanization process, a lot of that's galvanized,
Yeah.
and it's the galvanization process that will give off fumes. But once it's galvanized, unless you heat it up really hot, there's no way it's going to give off those fumes again.
And not hot enough, like not pure.
No, now I don't like using wires or things like that for trellises in our area for another reason. Is because in midsummer, those, if you go out and touch those when the sun shines on them, they are hot. And your plant trying to grow on it is going to get
So what do
fried.
you use for like, if you want to do an arch or?
You can use the wire and then coat it, paint it with something.
Because they do have the coat, the vinyl
Yeah,
coated.
the vinyl coating is good, or painting it.
Just white.
Something just to coat it, to keep it from getting that super hot. I mean, that'll even happen if you use dark colored containers, black containers, and you have them sitting out somewhere where the sun is hitting them. The roots tend to stay away from that because it gets so hot in the summer heat that it'll actually kill any roots that start to get near the edges. So a lot of those people get them and they'll paint them white because it definitely does reduce the temperature. They've done research to show that. Any more questions? Yes.
So the recommendation for mulch is to do quite a few inches on top of, once you have your vegetable garden going. I think the book said like 4 to 6 inches. I'm wondering when you do that, because I'm imagining transplants that are probably only yay high, and then 6 inches of mulch on top of that. Yeah.
Does it actually say 4 to 6 inches in the book? Yeah, it should be 3 to 4.
Okay.
Because if you get it too thick, you actually start to affect the roots. But when you do a transplants, and with that, usually when, I don't know if it says it or not, when you're doing vegetables, and even sometimes your trees, you don't want the mulch right up against the stem. So you got to pull back so your 4-inch tomato plant would be sitting in a little hole like that, with 4-inch walls around it, but not touching it. Yeah, because if it touches it, because the mulch holds in the moisture and everything, it will create good places for infection. So you do keep it pulled away from the stem. Don't let it touch the stem. But if you don't have at least 3 inches, your mulch isn't going to perform really what you want it to do, because you want it to hold in the moisture and stop weeds. And there are a lot of tough weeds that if it's much less than 3 inches, they'll grow right through it. And it'll look like you didn't even put mulch out.
So 3 to 4 inches, keep it away from the transplants, but.
Yep. And I like to, like this past year, with veggies, whenever the armyworms are out so bad, you know, the insulation that you can get for pipes, I cut little sleeves out of it and put it around the bottom of the plant. And so then the armyworms come, they don't go in and cut off the plant because I got a little barrier around it. And so you can do it with, you know, like empty water bottles, cut a little sleeve and slide it down and put the plant down in it. But that protects it from armyworms and other predators that want to come along and cut it off as soon as you plant it out. And what I like about those pipe insulators is they have a slit in them, so they open it up, you can put it around it, you open it up and take it off.
But you put the pipe insulator around the stem?
Yeah, you know, like for a stem this big, I would use like a 2 inch,
Yeah.
for a 2 inch pipe or something, so it's not right up against it.
Right.
And it protects it from the armyworms and cutworms. Yes?
Couldn't you use diatomaceous earth too?
Huh?
Can't you use diatomaceous, am I saying that right, earth?
Diatomaceous earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put that around and sprinkle that around them, and that's used a lot because soft-bodied insects like caterpillars come crawling across it, and it's like crawling across 1,000 little knives. It just makes all kinds of slices in them, and they bleed to death. Yes.
Ground cover crops?
Ground cover crop.
Yeah. What are good ones to incorporate and how to go about that? Because I've never explored that. Like, it serves as a mulch, right? Like living mulch.
Yeah, and what the ground covers a lot of times you're doing is using them to enrich the soil. You till them in, they're like green manure once they've grown and you're ready to plant into them. You don't usually have ground covers growing and then have your veggies planted in them, unless you know people that do that. They do that?
Yeah, especially the white clover in the winter months. You'll see that Dutch white clover.
Margaret,
I do a lot of cover cropping.
Which year?
Cover cropping.
Sorry, I'm also uploading next week's videos. There's 2 schools of thought. There's, well, two times when we do cover cropping, summer and cool season. Right now, if you're interested in cover cropping, like if you're done with your raised beds for the summer, cow peas or clay peas, you get them at Jefferson Feed. You want to weed whack them before they start flowering though, and setting their pods, otherwise you're just going to reseed the cover crop. I made that mistake. In the cool season, a lot of people locally use Dutch white clover, which you can get in a little 5-pound bag from Johnny's online. Or they'll use a combo of that, daikon radish, because it aerates, it pokes holes in the soil. Sometimes it's called tillage radish. And they'll also use sometimes a hairy vetch also, which is a nitrogen fixing.
So, but your bed has to be like.
It has to be bare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Otherwise, that cover crop's going to steal nutrients from what you're trying to
So you have to start that and then put your crops in
Yeah.
afterwards.
And then you would mow it down, usually turn it under, let it sit for about 2 to 3 weeks in our climate, and then you plant into it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like till versus no-till. Yeah, I guess generally, I'm always kind of unsure, like does no-till truly mean no-till?
No-till means no-till, no soil disturbance, and we do that for a couple of reasons. You're able to build material up, so almost like lasagna gardening, right, where we're adding our compost or our green manure. If you don't want to till that under, they have this machine on farms called a roller crimper, where it kills the cover crop by rolling over it and crimping the stem so it can't photosynthesize and send nutrients to the roots and vice versa. They let that sit and die for like a month, and then they plant into it. So no-till means no soil disturbance. It's being proven to be a better production method in a lot of crops because it doesn't release the soil carbon as much. You have all your beneficials there ready to go. The big thing is weed control. So you have to either apply an herbicide. A lot of no-till acres, they use glyphosate. They'll just knock everything down. That's why we're getting all those resistant weed species too. too, so it's like this trade-off. In a home garden, no-till is easy to do, because you just keep adding material on top. That's your mulch, that's your compost, your cover crops, stuff like that. You know, you wouldn't till it if you didn't know what to do.
But it's hard, with a big cover crop, like she said, you know, they use that crimper. Home gardeners can't get a crimper to do that.
And you wouldn't even pull weeds out, that disturbs it too much?
Well, you try to avoid it. So I do something called chop and drop with my weeds and with my spent crops too. Like I'll go through with my hand pruners and cut everything into little pieces, drop it, let it compost in place, and I'll throw finished compost over top of it, and it works pretty good.
But if you don't have good organic matter in your soil, no-till doesn't work.
Right.
Because you'll get compaction really fast. So you have to make sure that you start with at least 4% organic matter in the soil and then maintain it regularly. If you don't, and your organic matter drops, you'll get compaction.
Even just from the rain or from you walking
Yeah.
on it. And we see that a lot actually locally. You have to
Yeah.
add that 3 to 4 inches of compost twice a year, every year,
Yep.
to make it work.
And when you're growing vegetables, like, or whatever you're growing, and say something is like, you know, your broccoli's done, you're gonna pull it out for the season, do you clip it at the soil?
That's what I do.
Okay.
I just finished with my kale because our liquid bugs are too much to keep up with, so I just cut it at the soil line, chopped everything up, covered it with compost. And it works really good because then those roots are decomposing in the soil profile, and that's like water infiltration channels. They're breaking down, decomposing, they're feeding that soil life too. Yeah.
And it's back to, one question, is it okay to do that with weeds too?
If they're not actively setting seed, so that's the one caveat. And
No
if it's not
seeds.
torpedo grass. If you cut torpedo grass, it's just gonna propagate, right? Or
Yeah.
Bermuda grass too, but, the biggest weeds I'm dealing with at home are typically like lamb's quarter or spurge, and you can chop those up and just bury them.
The other question is, can peanuts be used as a cover crop, and at what point do you cut them down?
So peanuts are a little unique because you can harvest them as a cover crop and as an eating crop, and they're a warm season crop. So they would have been seeded sometime last month, although you could probably get away with it here because we have a long growing season into fall. So with them, you want like roughly 50% of the flowers to be present and open. And I'll give you guys a good website to check out about all this. But if you want to harvest those peanuts, you let them go until those vines die back. The tops get kind of brown and crunchy. But if you're using it as a cover crop, you don't want them making peanuts and then reseeding a cover crop, right? So you want to mow it down when about 50% of those flowers are present, from what I've read. There's a website called southerncovercropscouncil.org that is just for the southern region. It's mostly about using cover crops for agronomic cropping systems, but they're adding home vegetable gardens to it as well. And that fact sheet's supposed to come out sometime this year. So it's good to look at. You can click state by state or crop by crop and see what the options are. But the more popular cover crops here this time of year, peanuts, clay peas, cowpeas, and then in the winter it's that Dutch white clover, which a little seed goes a long way. The seeds are very tiny. Tillage radish, daikon radish, hairy vetch, and some ryegrass or Sudan grass even in the warm season too. You can get really nerded out about that, but the website I use is that southerncovercrops.org.
Southerncovercrops.org.
It's Southern Cover Crops Council, so if you Google that, it'll take you right there. Yep. Thanks.
Any more questions?
I have a question. You know how tomatoes will split if it rains a bunch and then they, you know, is it the same thing with peppers? Like when you get little splits in peppers, is that
Oh,
and the
it's
jalapenos have the little lines? Is the same reason or? Yeah.
And there are some varieties of jalapenos that they just naturally do it.
Oh, really?
Every pepper on there will have those cracks.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the older ones, or even some of them sold heirloom jalapeno varieties said the true old ones with the cracks and everything.
Right.
Some people think they're better when they have the cracks, which is
I was just gonna ask that. I know my 89-year-old mother, she said that if I go to the farmer's market, she wants the tomato that has the crop. Yeah. She says that's a Creole, that's a real one. I want that one.
Yeah, it's funny how these things persist generationally. But yeah, she onto something where the flavor might actually be a little more pronounced. It's hard
They
to
come in a different flavor, because I've kind of tested it, you know, I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah. It's like citrus mites on citrus fruit. A lot of people look for that fruit with the mite damage because the fruit ends up being sweeter. The tree's response to it creates sweeter fruit.
My clients.
Any other questions? Yeah, we can. Okay, before we start with the lab, one of our 2019 Master Gardener graduates is here to give a little talk to you about some volunteering opportunities. This is Jim Poche from 2019. You gotta come and stand here too, Jim, because I'm filming you.
Oh, yeah.
That's wonderful, Joe. Thanks for Joe loves to kill this particular plant, so we're gonna make sure he gets another one.
Thanks, Jim. You gotta know what it is?
What?
Huh? No, I might know it.
You're correct, but do you have the name?
I do not know
Plumeria.
Very good. Whoever just knows.
Jim, I call him a plumerian, so now you know how. He has an unusually great collection of plumerias at his house that he does sell. He has a business.
Yes, because of Anna, I decided to open a nursery after 2019, the class.
He was giving them away willy-nilly, and then Anna talked to him and said, you know, Jim, if you sold these, you could make some money.
So
Really?
I'm trying to find, what we're gonna do is we need volunteers for braiding. I'm trying to find someone that could braid my beard just like So anybody here, that's the volunteer opportunity today.
Some extensions too.
Maybe so, that might be a good idea. These two people right here, plus Chris, wherever he is, I don't see him again, are wonderful. I can tell you, you're gonna learn more from these two. Three, actually. I enjoyed the class so much, I've come back a few times now. They asked me to do a few different things, and I do it. One of the things I'm doing this year is I'm doing the Fall Garden Festival here in the Botanical Gardens. An opportunity for you guys through that whole weekend. How many hours do y'all need for volunteers for you over here? 40. Whew, we only had 10 when I did. Not true. It was 40. And I actually did it in the end of 2019. I did it at the Fall Garden Festival. I put in my 40 hours that weekend. I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I got my gold tag, my gold badge. We all walk around, and if you see this, you know who's what, when, and why, and how. So to get this quicker, we have an opportunity to make or do or work a lot of hours that weekend. I'm going to be, or Anna will be having a sign-up sheet for this class. Otherwise, it goes online for the other Master Gardeners that are here tonight. I've seen a few. If you want to volunteer into some type of lead of one of the different, we call them, what do we call the groups?
Stations.
Not stations, our committees. So if you are a go-getter and you want to become one of those, let me know. Find me, Anna or Joe can give you my number, my name, and get in touch with me. But it'll be a sign-up sheet soon coming out, and please volunteer for this. It's on September 11th, September 12th, and we start on Friday, the 10th, setting up. So Friday's a really nice day because you get to meet all the vendors, you get to see all the plants, anything plant related, you get to see that on that Friday. During the show, it's hard for you guys to walk around and go see everything because we expect you to work your stations or work wherever you're assigned. So just let us know, please volunteer. Get this quicker than later because...
Got a question over there, Jim?
Any questions? Yes?
Yeah, do you have to volunteer all 3 days, or could you come?
No, you can volunteer. There's going to be a minimum of like 4 hours, 5-hour shifts.
Okay.
So you can just do that. You don't have to do 40 hours. But if you want to get it all in at once, it's one way of doing it. So some of us did it that way. Not many. Some of us are crazy.
There's lots of different jobs involved with this,
I'm
as you can
sorry,
imagine.
question?
Oh, it's more for them to remind us, when are the 40 hours due for?
You have 18 months from the start of the class.
Okay.
You've got plenty.
So
Long time.
The end of 2022 is when you need to have your 40 hours finished.
Okay.
And I can tell you one thing, and I've learned this. This opens a lot of doors at a lot of places. Wearing this tag, going to nurseries, going to growers, you introduce yourself, they see the tag, they let you in. A lot of cases, it's wholesale prices or lower. So those things happen too. And I've been all over Southeast and Southwest Louisiana with this tag on, and I love it. And I represent these guys very well and the state very well, so.
And once you get that gold tag too, I mail you a membership card that gets you 10% off at all the independent garden centers in town, which is a nice little lanyard they do for us.
And at some, you get even more.
Yeah.
So it's very nice to have.
And if you volunteer, you get in free to the festival too, otherwise it's $10.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is there any other opportunity other than that weekend?
Oh, heck yeah, there's opportunities throughout the whole year.
Yeah, as things are opening up, we do a spring garden show too. We do Ag Magic on the River. That's a whole week of field trips down at Miro, Louisiana. So there's a lot coming up.
Okay.
Yeah, this is not the only
This
thing,
is like the
but,
first big thing we can do together.
yes ma'am.
I go to the Gretna Farmers Market once a month, the second Saturday, and I am always looking for somebody to come with me. And for some reason, people in the East Bank don't understand it's a bridge. Where you can actually get there.
I still use my P-Rog though, is that okay? I'm old and I mean, that's what I do to get.
Works for me.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, thank y'all so much for having me, Joe.
Thank you. I'm not gonna kill that one.
He doesn't leave and freeze his kill things.
Oh, so I guess we're ready to start the lab. Now y'all have the 4 sheets. This is the part fruit veggie lab, and up here on the table there are 40 different samples, all with a number. Don't move them from one number to the other. So you'll get up and walk through, and there's questions on there. You can go through quickly and identify the stuff, and then you can go and come back and check out when he says, well, what part of the plant are you eating? You want to come and take a look at it again, you can. But we'll spend some time now doing that lab, and then we'll go over the answers at the end. Some of them will probably surprise you.
I just messed up.
We're not going to take a few minutes off. Is everybody ready? So, number 1, what is it? Fennel. Sometimes they call it anise in the grocery stores. What part of the plant do we eat? This is the bulb fennel, so what are we eating on? Stem. We gotta vote for stem. Got anything else? Leaves.
Seed, she said.
seed? Oh. That's true. That, you got, evening class came up with that warning, didn't we? We do eat fennel seed. So, then what part of the plant is this? It's leaves. It's made of leaves. This is a modified leaf. This is still a leaf. There's a little, if you cut this open, and there'll be a little short stubby thing on the inside that is the bud starting out, and you can actually see, I mean, the stem is probably only a few millimeters long. So these are leaves. Oh, that's right. I forgot all the other questions. Does it grow in Louisiana easily? Yes. New Orleans? Yes. And cool or warm season crop? Cool. Yeah, there's some that kind of bridge the gap, but the majority it's grown as a cool season crop because what sometimes defines cool season versus warm season is cool season can take a frost and keep on growing. Warm season crops can't. Now, usually the cool season crops prefer the cooler weather. In the warmer weather, they might start to bolt, go to seed, or they might get bitter, or as happens with some of the things that are perennials that never survive as perennials in New Orleans is the heat and the humidity kills them. Okay, what about this one? Yes. What part of the plant do we eat? Leaves. Yeah, I figured that one. This is probably one of the easiest ones you're gonna get. We can. Yes and yes. Yes. And what season? Cool. Cool. Oh man, you guys are good on that. Okay. What about these guys? What part of the plant do we eat?
Seed.
Mainly just the seed because you don't eat that outer part. The outer part is part of the fruit. It's the extra part. So, see, that's the kind of thing you might see on a final exam, and we'd be real picky. So, what type of fruit is it? Did you guys all hear that? What type of fruit it was? Simple legume. Yes. Very good. Grows in Louisiana? Yes. Grows in New Orleans area? Yes. Yes. And warm or cool? Warm. Warm. Very good. Okay, now that's it with the easy ones. What about this? Blackberries. And what do we eat? Fruit. And what type of fruit is it? Aggregate of drupelets. Wow, several tables got that. Very good. You guys are good. Grows in Louisiana? Yes. In New Orleans? Yes. I know I got warm and cool on there, but for fruit sometimes it's almost, but it is, yes, warm. That's when we harvest. Do you guys all know the difference between, yes?
Can you go over blackberry, unless we're still there, can you go over blackberries again? What, I asked the type of fruit was that it was a simple multi-seed, which else said something different. What was
No, it's an aggregate of drupelets.
Drupelets.
With the little drupes. You guys know, I mean, it's in the book, I think, so you guys probably know by now if you didn't. The difference between the multiple fruit and the aggregate fruit.
Yeah.
What's a quick definition?
Multiples like a grape, right?
So what, if you were to define it, if you were to make a simple definition of an aggregate fruit, what is it?
It's like all the seeds are different.
Aggregates from different flowers, right?
Comes from a single flower.
Just the opposite. Aggregate is a single flower with multiple pistils in that single flower. And a multiple fruit is multiple flowers that actually fuse together to create the large fruit. So multiple fruits have multiple flowers, aggregate fruits have multiple pistils, or a single flower. Don't have that on the test. But now this one, I put it next to it because what was the common name of that one? Number 4? Blackberry. What's this one? So the common name, they're both berries. Now we know that one's not a berry, so what about this one? Or eat the fruit, it's a simple berry. These are true berries. Grow in Louisiana? Yes. In New Orleans? Yes. Warm or cool? Warm. What about these guys? Pears. What do we eat? The fruit. And what type of fruit is it? Simple pome. Pome simple. And this is also, what you're going to have several over here. This is an accessory fruit. Because that fleshy part that you're eating, you know what an accessory fruit is? I think they have one in there. This example. It's the fleshy part that we eat is made up from something outside of the ovary. So it's other parts of the flower itself that aren't part of the ovary that develop into the fleshy. So the actual fruit, the ovary, the endocarp, the ectocarp, is that pit, the core area, the core that's left after you eat all this off. That is really the true fruit. This is the aggregate fruit.
And the fleshy part itself?
The fleshy part is not part of the true ovary and fruit and all that other pomes. And that's all pome fruits are like that. Grows in Louisiana?
Yes.
Grows in New Orleans area?
Yes.
Nah, not really. I mean, there are some that, and I even saw someone over on the West Bank in Algiers Point is growing one in a container. And I got pictures of it, nice, large, well, not for a pear tree, but it's a good size and had 10 or 15 fruit on it. So it depends on the situation, and that comes back to what we're mainly looking at and what you know, is because lemon trees, people grow them in New York City, and we know that that's not the best environment. But if you can put things in containers and move them in and out, there's a lot of things that you can grow in areas that normally you wouldn't. So, but normally we'd say that doesn't grow in the New Orleans area. Yeah, that's true. But this, yeah, this is not the, so variety can make a big difference. Like I said, the cooking pears do grow well down here. I think you even have that in the fruit and nut booklet that you guys got. It does talk about the different types of pears and ones that can grow in certain areas and don't grow in other areas.
Is it a cool season?
Pears are warm season. This is number 7, right? Yes, number 7. What part of the plant? You're eating the flower. You mean this fleshy part is a modified leaf.
That's not what you want to look at. This is the part inside that comes up.
And the base. The base. That is part of the flower. So you're eating the flower and the leaves. And sometimes the stem is even tender.
Yes, the stem.
But this is one primarily, you know, that,
You can eat the stem too.
yes, grows in Louisiana. Yes, they do. Grows in the New Orleans area? Yes, they do. Warm or cool season? They're actually more of a cool season. Because usually if you're growing artichokes, you plant them in the fall, they go through the winter, and in the spring, they put up their flowers, buds, and they start to form those buds, and you're harvesting them before the weather really gets warm, because when the weather heats up, They go ahead, the flower completely opens, and the heat usually kills them. They're perennials, but they almost never work as perennials in the New Orleans area. They like the cooler weather. They don't like it as hot as it gets here. All right. 8. Cabbage. What do we eat? Leaves. Grows in Louisiana? Yes. New Orleans? Yes. Cool, warm? Cool. Strawberries. The fruit. What type of fruit? Sesame fruit. And the actual fruit, little fruit itself, those little tiny things that look like seeds, they contain the seed, but they're achenes. Achenes. So this would actually be an aggregate of achenes. And the fleshy part that we eat is the yeah, the fruit.
It has charm.
Yeah.
And also.
And that's grows in Louisiana.
Yes.
New Orleans.
Yes.
Warm or cool? Warm. They actually, you grow them through the winter and then they flower and fruit in the summer, but if it doesn't get warm, they won't flower and fruit. And they can be damaged by frost. Will damage the fruit and really hurt them. What is that? Oh, here I am. Number 10.
Okay, so I was thinking it was cold weather because they're ready in June, April, and March, but it's when they hold the times that they're growing. But no, it's when you harvest them that you said it's cold weather or
Warm and cool is hard. Sometimes some things you have to call them corn. They need the cool weather in order to develop the size and everything it needs to make the fruit. The strawberry goes through the cold weather in the winter. But in order to make the fruit, it has to have the warmth of the spring to turn on the flowering and to cause it to produce fruit. And if it freezes, once that fruit and the flowers are produced, it'll kill them all.
So that's why in Ponchatoula they always get afraid of only frost because it's going to.
Yeah, it'll destroy the strawberry crop. So that's kind of why we say that's more warm than cool.
They usually harvest it like it's really in March. It's so good.
And then there are evergreen strawberries that do grow, they produce all through the summer. Yeah, much later in the year. And there's early producers and late producers. Okay, what is this? 10. The peach. What do we eat? Fruit. It's simple. A drupe.
It does grow in Louisiana, but not so well done here.
Very good. Yep. Grown in Louisiana, but not so well in the New Orleans area. It's warm. Ready, Anna? Avocado. What do we eat? Fruit. What type of fruit is it? Simple.
Is that true?
And what else? It's not a drupe, no.
Why not?
It's a berry. Berries can have single, most of the time they have multiple seeds, but they can be single seeded. And a drupe, like this guy, now that has that stone on the inside, and if anyone's ever cracked open yeah, that little almond thing, that is the seed. So that whole thing is not what you would call the seed, the pit of the stone fruit. Now if you crack open an avocado seed, there's not another little seed in there. That big pit in the middle is the seed. And it's a fleshy fruit, and it's got this leathery exterior. So it's a berry. Do they grow in Louisiana? Yeah. Do they grow in New Orleans? Yes.
Sorta.
Anna disagrees.
What was there? Was there another question? Oh, warm or cool? They're warm. And one thing about avocados, you never let them ripen on the tree, because if you do, you don't want to eat them.
You don't want to eat them live.
Because when they, what happens is they ripe, they get really soft, and that's the ripening process. They get soft and gushy, and so you don't let that happen on the tree. You pick them green, and then and the flavor changes and everything. So for eating, for us, you don't want to let them ripen. You want to pick them green, and then let them soften. What are these guys? Kiwis. What do we eat? Fruit. Can somebody tell me what kind of fruit it is? Berry. Yeah. Grows in Louisiana?
No. What? You're kidding me.
Show me the kiwi.
Just show me.
Okay, you gotta come over to my house. I got one growing in the front, in a container. But yeah, normally you would say kiwis don't really grow very well in Louisiana and in New Orleans area, but it depends on variety. Just like with the avocados. If you try to grow the Hass avocado in New Orleans or anywhere in Louisiana, it's gonna freeze every third year probably. But there are varieties that can take temperatures down into the low 20s, and those grow and are sold in the area, and so you can get avocados to produce. And the same thing with kiwis. There's called hardy kiwi, and they can take temperatures down into the low 20s. And a lot of those, you guys probably already know that most kiwi, which would be this one, most kiwis, there's male and female plants.
Yes.
But the hardy kiwi, there's also self-fertile plants that you only need one plant to get fruit off of it. So
you're saying yes for kiwi?
I'm saying it depends on the variety. I would, no would be the best answer.
Thank you. What about
Warm, very hot. These guys. Mangoes. What do we eat?
Fruit.
What type of fruit?
Berry. Simple berry.
Well, you can't open the avocado, there's a seed inside of that shell that you can eat all over.
Right.
The very outside of it, there's a.
Wait, you can split it open.
Is the hard thing the seed or the?
No, there's something inside of that.
What's happening?
It's a drupe. It is a drupe. They grow in Louisiana. In New Orleans? Well, they don't grow in Louisiana, they don't grow in New Orleans. And warm, very warm, tropical. Yes. What do we eat? Flowers and also stems. And grows in Louisiana? New Orleans? Cool. Very good. Now we're on a roll. Sweet potato. What do we eat?
The root.
Okay, we got stems, we got roots. How many say stem? Raise their hand. How many say root?
We have to stick with that.
It's a root.
And it's the other one. Right? It makes sense because
Louisiana grow? Yeah, Louisiana used to be famous for it. New Orleans grown? Yes. Warm, cold. They have to be planted and grow through the hot of the summer to develop, and then usually in a lot of states they wait till the frost kills the vines before they harvest. In the New Orleans area you'd be waiting maybe 3 years from then, but when it gets cold is when you harvest them. So corn. Corn. Cool annually. You've got to have the warm weather to grow through, and then the cool weather is when you harvest it. But you can't grow them through the winter and then harvest them. This guy. What do we eat? What type of fruit is it? A vegetable. Who's that? What type of fruit was it? A berry. It's a simple berry, and it's actually a specialized berry, a pepo. Grows in Louisiana.
Yes.
New Orleans.
Yes.
Warm or cold? Warm. Celery. What do we eat? Stems and roots. That's what everybody's saying. What? And leaves. What is this?
A leaf.
That's a leaf petiole. So we really aren't eating the stems unless you eat that little core part on the very inside.
So if those are leaves, then what are the leaves on top?
This is the petiole to a compound leaf. This is a compound leaf. This is its petiole. So we're really eating the leaves. That's predominantly what we eat, are leaves. And Louisiana?
Yes.
New Orleans?
Yes.
Cool or warm?
Cool.
Oh, yeah. What's this guy? Turnip. What part of the plant? Root. Louisiana?
Yes.
New Orleans?
Yes.
Warm or cool?
Cool.
Cool. Now someone was looking at it earlier and they were saying, that's a turnip? Yeah, it looks like it could be a rutabaga. They decided on turnip. But if this were a rutabaga,
It would be carrot. It'd be bigger.
it would have the leaves coming out here and you wouldn't be eating a root. You would be eating a stem. They look very much alike. One's a root, one's a stem. Garlic. What part of the plant are we eating? Someone said root. What part of the plant are you eating when you eat garlic bulbs?
It's a ball. Let's try them all, right?
They are actually modified leaves. That's a freshly modified leaf. So you're eating the leaves. Grows in Louisiana?
Yes.
New Orleans?
Yes.
Warm or cool? That's almost because sometimes it takes some varieties of garlic take 6 to 9 months to develop. So they got to go through. Usually plant them in the fall, let them grow through the winter, and then on into the summer, and then they develop.
So is it cool or warm or corn?
Corn, that's what I call it. So what do we have here? Onion. What are we eating? Leaves. Yeah. Grows underground, but we're eating the leaves. New Orleans area? Yes. Cool or warm?
Aren't there two different kinds, like long day and short day, and they're different?
You can't grow them in the cool part of the year, and you don't grow them in the hot part of the year. Yeah.
I tried to grow them.
Oh, it's not an apple, it's not a pine tree. So what part of the plant are we eating? Stem. Fruit. What type of fruit is it? Multiple fruit.
Wait, what did you say we eat? It's a fruit.
This is a fruit.
Yeah, but we're eating the what?
We're eating the fruit.
Oh, I thought you said root.
No, fruit.
I thought you said fruit.
Sorry. And it's a multiple fruit. And you want to eat these little fruits? Well, it's hard to tell with a commercial pineapple because they are all parthenocarpic. They never form the seed, but those are actually little tiny berries. So it's multiple fruit. of berries. Does it grow in Louisiana? You can grow, like you can grow papaya. Yeah. But they normally wouldn't be considered a crop that's grown in Louisiana, but you can actually grow them. There are no commercial pineapple growers in Louisiana.
Yeah. So you saying we should start a commercial?
Corn, yeah. They're a tropical fruit for sure.
Berry. Orange is a berry.
It's a fruit and it's a simple berry Hesperidium. It's a berry and it's a subset of the berry called a Hesperidium. 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 It means it has a leathery outside. Grows in Louisiana. New Orleans. Cool and warm. Corn.
It's a corn.
I think it's a corn. They will grow perfectly well not ever getting cold.
But don't you get sweeter after the whole snap?
Yeah.
I was trying to explain
So what do we have here? Green beans. So what do we eat when we eat these? Yes, these are green beans. Fruit and seeds, yes. Because the seeds are in there. The bigger they get, the more you want to eat the seeds and leave the other part, but they're the fruit. So what type of fruit is it? It's a legume. Grows in Louisiana?
Yes.
New Orleans?
Yes.
Warm or cold? Warm. Okay, these guys. And they aren't replicants. So what do we eat? What part do we eat? Who votes for roots? Who votes for stems? Stems have it. This is a true tuber. Which is a modified stem that, for storage. Grows in Louisiana. Grows in New Orleans. Warm or cool?
Warm. It's not hot,
Not hot or cold, but warm or cool. They really like the warm weather. They don't like cold. Frost will knock them down. Is this number next one? Yes. Corn. What do we eat?
The flower.
The flower? The fruit. We're eating the fruit. What type of fruit is it? Aggregate of Caryopsis. Each little fruit is Caryopsis. It's an aggregate. Each little kernel in there is an entire fruit. You guys know what the silkone corn is, right? It's the what? So that's the stigma. The style of the stigma. No, wait a minute. Stigma is the sticky part, and the style. And so when when a pollen grain lands on the very tip of those long silks on corn, it grows the pollen tube all the way down that very skinny silk, all the way down. And if it's down here, it grows it all the way down there and moves down there and does the pollination. That's really
So when you
funky. Detassel? When they do detasseling, what they're doing is they're doing breeding, and so they're stopping all the male pollen from that particular crop that they're looking at, variety, from developing because they want the male pollen from another variety to come over and pollinate it. And so that's what the detasseling is for, to prevent the pollination. Jersey, Louisiana. New Orleans. Warm? Warm. What are these guys? These are unusual examples, yes. Okay. So what are we eating? 26.
We're eating fruit.
The fruit and the seeds. Yep, got the little white guy in there. And what type of fruit is it? Capsule. Woo-hoo. Now you're rolling. And grows in Louisiana? Yes. New Orleans? Yes. Warm or cold? Warm for sure. Hot. Carrots. What part? Root. Yes. Yeah, there's actually someone, I think they gave me the recipe, I don't know if they did.
I have a lentil recipe.
For,
Carrot top pesto.
that's it, carrot top pesto. They take the carrot top and make pesto out of it.
And we can make a good lentil soup with it.
New Orleans?
Yeah.
Yes. Warm, cool. Cool is primarily when we want to grow them. Yes. Oh, what are we up to? 29. 28. Rice. Yes. What part of the plant are we eating? The seed, yes. Grows in Louisiana, yes. New Orleans. You could grow it in New Orleans, yes. Yep. They can grow it outside. They probably grow, I tell you, from us looking at people's lawns, they probably do a better job growing rice than the underground. Cooler water, it's warm.
Warm is still on rice. Okay.
Now we're ready for 29. Watermelon. What do we eat? Fruit. The fruit. What type of fruit is it? Simple berry. It's also a pepo, like the cucumber. Pepo, yes. Grows in Louisiana? Grows in New Orleans?
Yes.
Warm or cool? Warm, yes. You guys know how they get seedless watermelons? Pennsylvania. Well, spit them out. She said you spit them out. The seedless watermelon, what they do is they cross diploid watermelon with a tetraploid watermelon. And that produces seeds that are triploid. You know what I'm talking about when I say diploid, tetraploid? Diploid means it has two copies of the chromosomes, two sets of pairs of chromosomes. Tetraploid means it has 4, triploid means it has 3. And then whenever you cross a triploid plant, in this case the watermelon, with a diploid plant, it's sterile. And so it doesn't produce fruit with seeds. And that's how they get seedless watermelon. It's a lot of work. And that's why if you ever buy seedless watermelon seeds, they'll send you a pack of seeds, and inside they'll have a sub pack of seeds. Either that or they'll tell you to mix. So if you buy them and you only want to grow 1 to 2 plants, and you want to make seedless watermelons, you better make sure that you got that pollinator growing somewhere nearby, or that your neighbor is growing some. Otherwise, your triploid watermelon will grow up and never make fruit. Third, red beans. What do we eat? Seeds. Grow in Louisiana? Yeah. Georgia. New Orleans? Yeah. Warm? Cold? Warm. So not to 31 yet. Eggplant. What do we eat? Fruit. What type of fruit is it then? You guys are really getting good now. Grows in Louisiana? New Orleans? Warm, cold? Warm. Okay, 32. Banana. What do we eat? Fruit. What type of fruit? Oh, yeah. You are getting good. Does it grow in Louisiana? Yes. New Orleans? Yes. Warm or cold? Warm.
It's not really that weird.
Not really what?
We grow plantains.
Oh, no. Yeah, bananas.
Like that?
Yeah. They will make sweet bananas like this, not plantains, yes. And they even have some, they grow the mini ones. They'll do quite well. Okay, here we go. Ginger. Or someone calls it ginger root. So what part of the plant are we eating? Stems, yes, rhizome, underground stems. The morning class, no one got that one right. It's a rhizome, that's an underground stem, so you're eating the stem. Does it grow in Louisiana? Yes. New Orleans? Yes. Warm, cool? Now they can take it cool somewhat, but warm is when they really like to grow. 34. What do we eat? What is it? Simple berry Hesperidium. Grows in Louisiana? Yes. New Orleans? Yes. Warm, cool? Warm, extra warm. 35. Apple. Fruit? Yes. What type? So that means it's a what kind of fruit? Accessory fruit. Remember the pear?
No, that's fine.
Grows in Louisiana? Yeah, up in the Ruston northern area of Louisiana, they do grow apples. What about the New Orleans area? No, not really. They develop during the hot part of the year, and then they're harvested in the cool part of the year. It takes them that long to get ripe. So I would say they're kind of tomatoes. What do we eat? Fruit. What type of fruit? Grows in Louisiana and New Orleans? Yes. Warm, cool?
Easily? No. That's true.
Oh, yes. What is it? Peppers. All kinds of them. What is it? Fruit. What type? Berry. We eat a lot of berries, don't we? Louisiana. New Orleans. Warm, cool. Basil. What do we eat? Leaves. Louisiana. New Orleans. Cool, warm. Warm. Asparagus. What part do we eat? Stems. And you got all those buds there. They aren't really flowered yet, but they will be. It's a perennial.
But wait, you're eating the stem and the
the flower buds. But primarily you would say stem. And grows in Louisiana?
Yes.
Grows in New Orleans?
Yes. Cool.
Cool. And the final one. Figs. Yes. What are we eating? Fruit and what?
The receptacle.
You know what this part of the fruit actually is?
It's a flower.
This
The bottom of the flower that goes up, right?
is actually the stem.
Really?
This is a modified stem coming up here.
No way.
And then it's an enfolded flower. And that flower, there's a bunch of little tiny flowers on the inside there. So you're eating, I would say primarily you're eating the fruit, and it is what type of fruit? Multiple fruit. You know what the little fruities in there are? They're grouplets. They're little grouplets in there. Yes. They grow in Louisiana. Oh yeah. New Orleans? Oh yeah. Warm or cool? Warm. Yep. Most of the figs that we eat commercially grown, especially in the U.S., are parfleau carpet, so they don't need pollinating. But you guys all know the story of the fig wasp, right? Yeah, like the old world figs, most of the figs prior to them starting to develop them, they were parfleau carpet. And it actually is even species specific. There's a little wasp that when the flower forms goes into that hole, the female goes into that hole, and she goes in there to lay her eggs, and she crawls around and pollinates. But then after that happens, the hole is so tiny, it tears her wings apart and everything going in, so she never leaves. So if you eat the old world figs, you usually eat some larvae and some old wasp bodies. But that's how it got pollinated. That's how it gets pollinated. The fig wasp goes into the ostiole here, the hole. Most of them now have a closed eye.
Should we say that we're eating the stem as well?
Yes, technically you're eating the stem and the fruit.
When the larvae, grow up, they get out of the hole.
Yeah, they will leave.
They leave. Is that true of the avocado too? This would be
No, the avocado, what it is, it's got usually the avocado themselves, the pollen from the same tree will pollinate the flower. But they usually need cross-pollination of two different types, because the A type, the female part is mature in the morning, and the male part is mature in the evening. And the B type, the male part is mature in the morning, and the female part is mature in the evening. And that has to do with the weather. So you have to have an A type and a B type for the pollen to be mature and the egg to be mature at the same time and get together. If you don't have the A and the B type, you got young pollen with old ovaries, or old pollen and young ovaries, and they just don't pollinate very well. But most of them in Louisiana, because of the temperature, there's good self-pollination, because it is a temperature thing which makes the flowers do that. They are weirdos too. Yes?
When are you fixing dinner?
We got a smorgasbord.
We got 15 minutes, Joe.
Huh?
We got 15 minutes.
Of the whole class? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness! You guys want to prune?
Yeah.
We'll go look and do some talking about pruning, yes.
Alright.
This was, I guess I only got to get 20 fruits, or 20 edibles next time.
Okay, so this is a 4-year-old clementine that we're spallying. We actually have a pair of them. We did that when we were born. This spally. You guys remember reading about that? So creating a flat fruit tree, which I think is a really nice technique for a very small New Orleans yard. There's a few different forms. This is a lateral form. You can see we have these lateral guide wires. You can also do a fan shape. You can do like a 2 or 3 prong shape. It really depends. You can build these guide wires with wood, metal, or you can brace them against the wall. Traditionally, it's done against the wall because it's really heat sink. So it keeps it a little warmer in the winter months. It's a nice way to grow fruit almost like a microclimate. So you can read up about it. There's a lot of different forms. and ways to do it, but these are some that we're training laterally. So hopefully we'll have 3 levels of care. I have chosen the branches that we want to keep for our first set of laterals, and I'm not seeing any rootstock, which is good. Remember some of the videos talking about that. This is the graft union. You can see where it received some. I'm basically just cleaning this up, and we'll tie it so we can get our second level going a little bit more. These are those water sprouts that we were talking about. You can see there's like a whole cluster that kind of popped up. These were not here 3 months ago. So that quick, especially with all the rain we've been getting. So we want to remove those.
How do you know that's not part of the plant? How do you know it's a water spread?
Oh, because it's very new growth. It's green and flexible and really big. Yeah. And if you look at some of our older branches, they're starting to callus over already. They didn't like that bark. And they're a lot stronger. So I kind of describe them as willowy almost. And they always go straight up. Yeah. But with the Espalier, they won't do the final form if you leave them on there, so we try to remove stuff that pops up. Yep. And the Espalier, you have to kind of prune them hard for a few years, but it pays off.
What? It pays off?
Kind of naked.
Yeah. Gotta be severe,
Yep, and this is our one that's going up to the second level, so I'm kind of leaving that until we find 2 good branches to send to the group.
Why the biggest problem?
There's leaf miners on these, and a lot of citrus in the hot, wet weather, they'll curl up under the ground like that. It's pretty harmless. They have curls. So you can see this has grown a good 6 to 8 inches since the last time I tied it up. And same over here. You can kind of see where I'm trying to get some point. It's not quite as bad as the one in the morning. That one had gone a lot further. And you take a look at that. So
What are you using to tie it?
this is a green kind of rubbery flexible tie. Folded tomato tie. It's got some zip to it. You don't want to use wire or something that's going to cut into the floral tape. You use floral tape. I've used old cotton t-shirts cut into strips. That works too.
I don't like ribbon,
Yeah. Anything with some give to it. So this one is actually compared to the morning classes. What's this? Giant swallowtail caterpillar, yeah. It'll get about that big. Looks like poop, yeah. If you see those, leave them on your trees. They don't ever kill you. But you can see, even just with the light pruning we did, we removed a lot of material. Yeah. So it's not like staying apart, but it is kind of cool. You're afraid to shop.
So, the termites love citrus. How do you keep them out without poison them poisoning?
Bait stations 3 feet away from the trunk. That's actually recommended for fruit and nut trees. That's what they use in the pecan orchards because they have the same problem.
So what kind of bait?
It's whatever they said. It's like a block of wood in the ground in a little terminal. You can get them at the DIY pest control company out in Monterey.
The termites love food and chunks.
They do.
So they've already attacked mine once.
I had one in my neighborhood.
You were able to get the clean.
You got it.
I don't know how would you just,
Because the fipronil, yeah, the fipronil that they treat your houses with, you can't use that out of a crop. So it's my bait station is kind of girls right here.
Okay, so say where I can find the
The DIY pest control place out in Metairie, it was on Jeff Highway, but I think it moved to Severn. You'll have to Google it. And then you can get them at Wyndham Barber Laboratories in Harrison.
Oh, she's right up here. Okay.
We're gonna walk over.
I hate to stop here, but this is this garden is taken care of by one of our master gardeners, but we're talking about bad pruning. You guys remember when I told you to take cuttings, how to be nice to the plant? Where do you cut the cutting off before that you're going to use to make a rooted cutting? Right above a node, because when you leave something like this, there's a stub sticking out, and that's not going to grow any leaves on it. It's not going to develop anything. It's just going to be sticking out there. It's probably going to slowly die, and it's a place for fungal infection, for insects to come in. So pruning anything, you want to prune it to where it's going to grow, not leave a bad stub. So with the roses, you want to prune them about 1/4 inch or so above a bud. Now with most roses, you also want to prune them like this one would be. It's got a bad stub sticking up. I prune that one there, and now I've got a bud that's facing outward. Because with roses, you want them to be airy, have an open base-like structure to them. So you always prune and leave an outward-facing bud so that the stem grows this way. If you leave an inward-facing bud, that dominant stem will grow inward, and you'll start to get crossing and a lot of density in there that you don't really want. So that's with pruning roses. Pruning anything, you don't want to leave those stubs. It's just not a good thing for the plant at all to have those stubs sticking out. You always want to use the tool for the job. If you have a pair of pruners like this and you start to cut something and you happen to do this and this, it means you need to get bigger pruners. Because you can actually start to do more damage to the plant when you do that. So here's another one, stub sticking up. There's another little bud right there. So. Yeah. You see, that's where something's caused some problems because of the.
When you cut the dead flower off, where do you cut it?
Oh, the dead flower? You do take it back to where you're deadheading. You want to take it same back to a bud area. Yep. Because if you'll leave this much sticking out on it, you still got something there. You know, nice tissue for insects and fungi and other things to come in. So prune always to a bud on something like this. Now if you're pruning back a limb, which we're going to see over here now, you're not going to be pruning back to a bud, obviously, or not always. Here was a stub that was left. Let's take a look at this one. That was pruned and the stub and down to this has died. Pruning limbs, even on this, you want to find that branch collar right there, and you want to prune just beyond it. Not into it, just beyond it, so that when you prune, this is all actively growing tissue, and this will now grow over and heal. If you cut too far in, you're cutting into that healing tissue and it won't heal. And if you leave too much out, you're leaving that stub sticking out. And this will actually try to heal over. This will come and heal over that area. But if there's a stub sticking out, it can't even do that. So it can't heal itself. And a question from the earlier class, when you're pruning, even large pruning cuts, they used to paint those with black, tar, all that kind of stuff, something to coat them. They did some study on it and they found that it's not good. You don't want to do that. The plant will actually heal better if it's just left open to do its own thing. They even go so far, packing holes with cement and blocks and stuff like that. It's not good. Not good for the plant. So that's how you would prune that. And then we're going to look at something that should have been pruned and wasn't. Well, what's wrong with this one? Did you guys say?
Rubbing up against.
You got some limbs rubbing, so you got crossing limbs. So that's definitely not good because, as you know, every time the wind blows, it rubs and that wound never has a chance to heal. Now, there are some plants that actually will fuse really fast. It's still not a good idea, but crepe myrtles, if they have crossing branches, they fuse really fast. So they aren't quite as bad, but even that, it's not good to leave them rubbing against each other like that. Look at this angle here, this branch angle. Yeah, it's narrow. That's probably about a 10 or 15 degree angle. And what, you see this happening here? You guys all see that? What's happening is this branch or this limb is expanding the way all of them want to. So is this trunk here. It's expanding. And because it has a very bad branch angle, as this tissue in here is growing, it's pushing against each other, crushing it, causing inclusion wood. And so this never forms a strong bond because it's constantly killing and damaging itself. And so angles like this would be very easy for a storm to come through and start blowing and just snap that off right there. And the same thing will happen with huge trees. So with this one, even now, I would go through and remove this. Take this out. It's the main part of the top of this tree, but the tree is going to be better off in the long run by getting rid of this, because this is a bad branch angle. It's rubbing this. This one's rubbing this. So I would take this one off, and I would either take this one off or this one. And it depends on if you like multi-stems or single stems. I kind of go more for something like this, having a little bit of a single stem. So I would take this one off, leave just this, leave this one growing out, and create a nice form with a good, see, this is a good branch angle. Even this one coming out is not a good branch angle. So this is always going to be weak. Now with smaller plants and trees, it's not as big a problem. If this was a huge tree, oak tree, cypress tree, sycamore tree, this would be a bad problem. It's just storm damage waiting to happen as it comes through and breaks them off. So with this one, yeah, take this out. Now if anybody needs to leave, they can. We're gonna walk down and look at one more down here. I see this one, how they pruned it. See how this is healing over nicely? I mean, it was pruned at the right spot. They left the collar there, and it starts to form this tissue, growing over, healing up the wound. Over the course of time, this will actually, if it lives long enough, will completely cover over. But this is also an example of why you really want to do your pruning as early as you can, because this is now a big open wound that takes longer to heal than if it were even a smaller one like this. Or this one, you see that one's almost completely closed. This one is completely closed here. So this is where there was one pruned off, and you see it's healed over completely. But that was, done a nice pruning job there. Yes? Yeah, that was the, but now like sycamore, see how this right here? It's already started to grow together and fuse. Now it'll take it a couple years to really get strong, so a strong wind comes, it'll actually break that apart. But I would have probably taken this one out and just left these three. Well, that will continue to push and grow against itself.
But is that okay? Will they become one?
They will. The sycamores, you can get away with it more. I mean, with crepe myrtle. With most plants, you can't. It never actually forms graft. It's almost like grafting itself. In most plants, it never happens. Yes.
One leaf that stops sticking out, the other leaf becomes flying to the top.
So this is where the collar was, the branch collar. Usually, the branch collar, especially you see as plants get older, it is not flat like that against the trunk of the tree. It actually forms at an angle, the same angle that the nice branch angle would be. So the branch collar comes up that high. So you can cut it flush, you would have left this part, but this would have been, you'd been cutting into that the branch collar, and it wouldn't have healed nicely. And there was one more you can take a look at.
can't see you.
And here we have a tree that's had some damage done to it. And you see what its problem is up there automatically, right? Right up here. Yeah, that terrible branch angle. It's got two main stems. And most trees do not like to have two main stems because there's always that weak connection. And this one, it looks like a cypress, but I think it's actually redwood, which is why it probably is not doing so great here. But this was a talk that I was having with one of the people who does some of the work here, and we were discussing. His idea was that he would probably leave this one and take this one out, and then I said I would leave this one and take this one out. So do you know why we both had different opinions? I'm not going to keep you here forever, but he was looking at it aesthetically. Immediately, it would look better with this one gone because this is a nicer, straighter trunk going upwards.
That one's going into the shape, yeah, but
Yeah.
that was just more canopy.
Yeah, and I told him I would take this one because if you look, this scar, there's no living tissue from here all the way around to here. So when you go up into this branch, most of the bark and the living cambium going up into it all along here is gone. So it's very, very weak as far as growth and potential. So that's why I would take this one off. This one has, better, more living tissue, and when this one's gone, this one will actually tend to straighten itself up somewhat. So for the long-term health of the plant, I would say leave this one, take this one. If you're just interested in how it looks right now, you would probably leave this one and take this one.
So how would you cut it?
You would take a saw and just cut down like that way, angle, because there's no real branch color there because most of the tissue is dead. You see, I'm going to showing you these different things, but there's all kinds of different tools. So for pruning, you really want to have a multiple set of tools because small cuts, large cuts, larger cuts. And you guys know that the 3-point cutting of large branches, how that's done to prevent?
It's next week, or week after next.
Oh, it is in there? Okay, Anna says that's coming up in 2 weeks.
Coming soon.
Stay tuned.
Oh, which is tell.
What caused the damage of the tree?
I'm not sure what caused it. It's been there for a while.
It's really crowded.
It could have gotten run into by something. It could have been a little lightning strike hit it. And that's usually, if you have huge wounds like that on a tree, a lot of times it is lightning strike that does those long stretches of death. Does anyone have any questions?
Turn them loose.
If not, feel free to hang around and walk through the garden. It's a beautiful night for it.
This is a raccoon. Yeah, he lives in.
Oh yeah, that's the tame raccoon.
The whole family.
He eats the cat food.